Welcome to UnMic'd, a video series that blurs the edges that connect the world of opera to just about everything else. My name is Joe Specter, and I'm the President and General Director of Arizona Opera. As a kid who grew up in Miami, Florida, with dreams of being a hard rock star when I was an adult, and who later ended up picking martial arts up and training in that for a big portion of my life, I have found those previous dreams and passions feeding into my everyday leadership of this opera company against all odds. The idea of UnMic'd, came from this notion that really disparate lifestyles, passions, hobbies, experiences in a world that's totally unrelated that connects to the world of opera, so that we can bring together people from these different lifestyles through this really wonderful art form. During each episode, I will be joined by a recognized professional from the opera field and a professional from another field who engages in similar work to demonstrate just how the elements of opera are the elements of our everyday lives. This is episode 3 of UnMic'd, the series where we explore the blurry edge between opera and just about everything else. And I'm so excited about this episode. This is actually our first episode that's featured singers explicitly, which is amazing because this is a program about opera. And we have 3 terrific artists here with us today. I'm going to start by saying I'm going to defer to the group here when we get into conversation about whether the name of this episode should be Powerhouse Quartets, which was my somewhat cheesy initial offering, or The Divo and the Divas, which is probably worse.
Yes.
Janis is on board.
I love that.
So our 3 guests today are Lauren Kinhan, a wonderful singer-songwriter in her own right, and a member of the wonderful Grammy-winning group New York Voices. Janis Siegel, also a wonderful solo artist and a member of Manhattan Transfer, both arguably sort of jazz vocal quartets, although there's some crossover work, a lot of it, and that's going to be part of our conversation today. And my 3rd guest today is David Miller, a wonderful opera singer with pedigree in opera, but also a member of the international platinum-selling group Il Divo. And here we're going to talk today about what these groups and these individual artists have in common, the sort of wild journey of their professional lives, how they converge, perhaps unexpectedly, and where they diverge. So thank you all for being here today. It really means so much to me.
Thank you for having us.
A pleasure.
So I'm going to sort of dive in this first piece. Music brings people together in a really profound way, and you as groups, I think one thing that distinguishes your 3 groups to me from what is sort of typically in the world of opera is that you have sort of families that are in addition to your blood families that you record with, that you tour with, and that for significant parts of your lives you have spent more time with than the people who are your actual relatives. And that seems to be a cohesive piece. It's actually so rare to find artists, particularly in opera, who have such prolific performing and recording background. So I sort of wanted to jump in the deep end of the pool and just ask you what that life experience is like to essentially have this built-in family that you travel the world with, and how you reconcile that with your personal lives. And I'm going to start with Lauren because she is my family. She's my sister-in-law. I've given up your dark secret right out of the gate. And so I've gotten to experience this reality, from afar as your brother-in-law. But Lauren, why don't we start with you? You've been with New York Voices for 30 years now, is that right?
Yeah, I'm coming up on 30. Yeah.
And you've toured for so much of that time. Now we get to see you on Zoom wherever you are. But but just talk to me about that experience of you started with the group, and at a certain point you didn't necessarily know it was going to lead, and now these are practically your blood relatives. So what's that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably all of us would collectively say that our our peers become our extended family. And I think the way I've personally reconciled it is including my real family, blood family, with this experience. So they've been sort of included throughout all of my touring life. Whenever possible, we drop in either to neighbor in the city that they live, and they're included, or my husband and daughter have flown all over the world with me. And so honestly, they just, my daughter was just saying the other day, like, I really miss New York Voices and going to a concert. And I miss that feeling of like, we're out and I'm with this extended family. And so, yeah, they become part of your bigger world, and you miss them like family. And we have Zoom meetings to just catch up with one another and figure out how are your parents doing? Oh, how's that bathroom, remodel coming along? I mean, it really is something where we're bonded. And so I think the way I've been able to reconcile being away from my family and daughter so much is that they've been included and part of it. And that sort of psychologically makes it easier for me to leave then and feel okay about it, and know that they know where I am and who I'm with.
Right. Well, that makes sense. And we'll have, Zoom in the new normal when we finally get there, so that when all of us are touring again, that we'll have this means of connecting that at least I never thought of as an avenue before.
Right.
Janis, how about you? Your personal life, your professional life, Manhattan Transfer tours so extensively. The last time I got to see you, I was thinking about it, was in Austin, probably 2015 or something like that. And you had just lost Tim, who is the founding member of the group, and it was a very emotional performance. Actually, that's really stayed with me, that show. Yeah. But talk to me a little bit. You and Manhattan Transfer have been together for a long time now. How do you maintain a connection to the personal part of your life that's separate from the group?
Well, we're coming up to our 50th anniversary as a group. Again, I mean, I echo a lot of the sentiments Lauren just expressed. I mean, as a woman, who wanted to have children, I thought, oh, wow, how can I integrate that into my life as well? And I just brought my son with me. I brought my son with me from the time he was 3 months old until, until he was really in school. And then I would bring him out for weekends and stuff. But as Lauren said, I wanted him to reap the benefits of the extended family, and he became very close with Tim especially, and everybody in the group, and learned what mommy does and who she's with, so that when I did leave without him, he wasn't flipping out or anything. I mean, these people are our family. You see the best and the worst of people when you're on tour. And I've learned so much about interpersonal relationships from being in the group dynamic. And I love being in the group dynamic, but it's challenging, and it's really different than being a soloist, certainly.
Yeah, indeed. No, that's powerful stuff. So David, you're coming to us from Woodstock, right?
Yes.
So you have chosen sort of like the Palace of Solitude as your primary domain to begin with. David's married to a wonderful soprano, Sarah Joy. And does she come with you when you're on tour? Like, how do you maintain your connection with her and your other friends and family? And you guys tour every other year, right? I think that's your approach. So roughly, you do an album and you'll tour the album, that kind of thing. A lot of time on the road.
Well, it's funny you say that. The Palace of Solitude, because right now we just got such a huge dump of snow. It really does look like the North Pole up here. Yeah. Looks like Superman's fortress up here. But and that is one of the reasons that we decided to move here, is to have periods of solitude, to just really shut out the rest of the world and to solidify our relationship. Being with the guys on tour, you said the pace of an album and then a subsequent tour. That was kind of the original pace when we first started out in 2004. And as we got more comfortable with the recording process, because I had never done recording prior to that. It had all been just strict opera in its natural environment. I had never worked with a microphone. I'd never been in a recording studio. And I had never worked with pop music before. So we had to take the time to really forge our relationships together, because we didn't know each other. We were put together and manufactured to some extent. And so we had to get over our egos, and we had to get over our own musical backgrounds. I was the most classically trained. Sebastian was a strict pop singer. Carlos had kind of done everything under the sun. Urs had done mainly early music, early composers. And so we all had vastly different musical ideas of what constituted great music. So we had to get over that. And it took time to craft each album with so many variables going on. And how do we blend and how do we harmonize these four leading voices? And so that was also another rung in the ladder of growth for us as a group. And eventually we got to the point where we became comfortable with this process. So we could do an album, take a couple of months, and then go back out on tour. So before the pandemic, we were at it for about 3 or 4 years straight, just kind of really just going for it and taking the opportunities as they come, because there's no guarantees in this industry that you might be popular now, you might not be popular tomorrow. So you really have to strike while the iron is hot. And then on top of that, my relationship with Sarah Joy, both of us being opera singers, both of us always looking for opportunities to perform together in those couple weeks here, maybe a month there, when there's downtime from Il Divo, trying to insert not only like a quick like bond our energies back together, hey, and she does come out on the road with me whenever our schedules permit, and whenever we're in a country or an area that makes sense. Going around South America, it's a logistical nightmare going from country to country and all the visas you need and all the everything. So we don't really do that. Japan, we sit down in Japan for like 3 weeks, and we'll, that's a great place for her to come over. And it's one environment. We take the trains everywhere. It's not planes. So trying to forge, not forge is not the right word, to kind of reconnect in our relationship. And then if we have downtime that's a little bit more extended, trying to have performance time together, because we love that so much. It's a lot to juggle.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And of course, in the traditional opera biz, we're very stationary. And I think one of the things that might be a positive outcome of this time is that we learn in my part of the business to be less insular and to sort of break through. And that's, one of the points of this show is to find a way for, opera to reconnect with people on a broad basis. I want to go back to something you said a minute ago, David. I was reading in preparation for our conversation today some writings of the great American choral conductor Robert Shaw, and I was thinking about this idea. You use the word blend, and you're talking about the different vocal styles that Il Divo brings to the group. Lauren comes from a singer-songwriter background. She didn't necessarily plan on being in a jazz voice quartet. She can disavow that if she wants to. But in all of your work together, you have to find a way to reconcile your individual artistic voice, whether that's from a pure vocal standpoint or from an artistic standpoint, with the kind of power that a group can only create when you're finding a way to reconcile that and bring it together. So starting with you, David, since we just got on the topic here, how do you square that? You have an early music person, you got a pop person, you got a legit opera singer. What is that process of blend? I mean, that if there is a word that terrifies an opera singer more than blend, I don't know what it is. How do you do that? Am I right?
That you have an excellent point. When I was actually, you mentioned Robert Shaw, and when I was at Oberlin getting my degree in vocal performance, I was in the choir there as well. And in high school, I was in the choir and I did the musicals. And so that was kind of a natural transition to be part of the choir. And this was really before I started breaking out and finding the depths and the extents to which my voice could reach. And we did one of Maestro Shaw's last performances, Mahler 4, Symphony of a Thousand Voices, and it was the Oberlin Choir, and it was the Cleveland Chorus and the Atlanta Symphony Chorus. And all of us went to Carnegie Hall, and it was one of the most impactful moments, I think, of working with this great legend and with all of these people singing as one voice. And really it taught me so much about how unison is just as important as harmony. And getting everyone's cumulative vibration in sync is so powerful.
Yeah.
So what we do in Il Divo is we always let the song dictate the nature of the song. We try and understand the nature of the song, and we try and understand the arc of the song. And each one of our unique vocal timbres suits different sections of songs, and it depends if it's a very linear melody, or if the melody jumps around, or if it starts strong, or if it starts soft, or if it's, every quality, every moment is always different. So we kind of always assess whose voice, and it took the first album took 4 months to record, because we're just getting to know each other's voices and what our voices even are good at in the construct of pop music.
Right.
Much less trying to figure out what language we wanted it to be. And we actually recorded every song in 3 languages to see which one would fit the best. But we take each part, we take each moment and say, all right, well, what's going on here? And it has a lot to do with how the arranger of the song was treating the song. So we would get that demo and we'd listen to it and we'd say, maybe Sebastian's voice would work better here. And we'd try that. And then we say, well, maybe it's Urs's voice. And we try that and we go, nah, maybe Sebastian was better. And so, or other times, no, maybe Urs is better. Actually, Carlos, have you tried this yet? And so it was really just kind of figuring out whose voice did what. And over time, it was the same with the recording versus touring. Over time, we got more comfortable with each other's voices, and we knew whose voice kind of just naturally would suit what. So then it became a question of layering on top of that. How do we take it from this intimate beginning of a song to an operatic-esque finale? And what is the transition, and what's the arc? How fast do we get there? How long can we sustain that process? And as we started developing each moment of seeing, like David and Urs's voice, they blend in a certain way. Certain harmonics pick up with each other. David and Sebastian has a different vibe. Sebastian and Urs has a different vibe. And everyone working with Carlos has a different vibe and with each other. So it really was, and again, it just depended on which part of the song who would be the most impactful at each moment, and how could we all blend with each other. And so it's always a continual discovery process.
Wow. So it's very collaborative, but more so than I would have guessed. But that makes total sense. You find sort of the emotional center of the song, or the musical center of the song, and then you sort of build out an identity from an individual artist from there. And I'm sort of reflecting on the performance that you just did in Phoenix. It seems like it was a few months ago, and I know that's not true, but that's the COVID timeframe.
I know.
Right.
Janis, Manhattan Transfer has done, if my facts are right, 29 albums together. Is that right? I mean, maybe you lose count at that point, but you surely have explored all of those kinds of dimensions that David was just talking about. And then also the added dimension in the last 6 or 7 years of adding a new voice to the group to try to integrate into a sound that's already very mature. How does that work for Manhattan Transfer?
Oh, okay. Well, there's a lot to talk about here with the idea of blend. First of all, we came together by destiny. So we discovered each other as singers, and none of us were schooled at all,
Hmm.
except Alan. Um, I also would like to mention the idea of the single gender group versus the mixed gender group.
Great point.
I think it's much easier to blend when you have the same gender.
Hmm. Hmm.
Look at all, the sister groups and
Uh-huh.
the all male groups, the Four Freshmen, the High Lows. They had I think, an easier time, especially those that were siblings, had a much easier time blending. Um, with me, I'm the alto, so I'm usually right below the melody. And with Laurel Massey, who was our original soprano, her voice was very creamy and uh, thick, rich. I had an easy time blending with her.
Hmm.
Cheryl is more like a clarinet, and she
Hmm.
joined. She's reedy,
Hmm.
and she joined us in 1979,
Hmm.
1980 after Laurel left. Um, we're two men and two women. And our signature sound is close 4-part harmony. So in the beginning, the men were really high with
Hmm.
us, in order to make that sound.
Oh yeah,
And
that makes sense.
as we've all aged, that sound has changed, certainly, because the guys, their falsetto got weaker or different. Their breaks lowered. We had to lower some keys or reassess the harmony. A lot of times.
Hmm.
Um, I was just talking about this issue last night with Take Six, who are, of course, a single gender group. And I mean, and the question was, who do you follow in the blend? Do you
Hmm.
follow the melody? Do you follow the top part? And again, as David was saying, it depends on the style of song. It
Hmm.
really does depend on the style of song,
Hmm.
because we do everything from out and out pop music to bebop to swing to western swing to Brazilian music to dance music. So it depends who's singing the lead,
Yeah,
really,
and I think
who we follow.
that's such a unifying character of your three groups as well, because you don't just have one sort of sound, one sort of approach. When you're talking about the concept of blend, you're looking at it longitudinally over a number of years. You're looking at it in
Exactly.
terms of repertoire in a single
That's right.
album. It's so complex.
It is. And
And
when Trist came in, it was a very different sound, because
yeah.
he was actually a true bass,
Hmm.
whereas Tim was not.
Hmm. Hmm.
Tim was more of a baritone, almost tenor, but he was singing the bottom part. But Trist is truly a bass.
Right.
So we had to readjust with that. And he's got a very full, fat sound.
Hmm. Hmm. No, I remember his sound in that concert in Austin. And I just want to give full disclosure here. I was a member of the Paragon Jazz Voice Ensemble at New World School for the Arts in high school, so I consider myself an expert in both opera and jazz. I try not to be too intimidated by that. uh, so Lauren, same question here. And thinking about that mix of repertoire, of course,
Yeah.
New York Voices has. I mean, I love the Paul Simon album as just one departure that your group has taken in terms of a sound. But is it the same for you? Is it the repertoire helps to sort of dictate the color that you're going to sort of gather around, or is it different for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we too, when I think about blend, I agree, even within and when opera perceives that word as kind of a dangerous word, there is such thing as, it's like, you can over blend, you can tuck everybody in so much that the very character of everybody's voice that is so singular and special gets watered down. So we really try to think of ourselves as, four singers. And we actually like all the character in each of our sounds. I too have a first soprano that's got a really warm, fat first soprano. She just nails it up there in a really fat way. So and I'm a little bit more bright and reedy. And so I'm right up underneath her, giving her actually some presence and something, you know, and then Darman, our tenor, is kind of more reedy and bright. And then our bass has got a lot of really warm, gooey stuff too. And so we really like
it sounds like an entree at a really good restaurant, you know.
Always. You know, and we're always thinking about if everybody's singing in tune, singing with similar vowels and attacks, and balanced, that wall that comes at you will have character that is unique to our particular four-headed artist, and it's not so tucked in that it feels like, God, I wish there was a person in that group sound, right? So we're always trying to actually find that balance of like a good blend, but then please let's have some gristle and some color and some stuff that's happening around it too, so that it feels alive as well in other ways. So we talk about that a lot. And we also, like, sometimes I switch and sing the top on the soprano stuff when we want a more bluesy, poppy thing on top. And then Kim will jump to the bottom. And likewise, so we play with our sounds, and yes, as David said, you know, we try to find the things that, like, someone does really, that's their thing, and you go, great, we need to find things that feature that thing that you do so well and support that. And it changes, of course, because we too the group's been around for 33 years. So like Janis mentions, we're not the 20-something-year-olds anymore with the 20-something-year-old voices. I still like all of our voices, but they're just different. You know, they're more lived in, and they're a little bit more, you know, like my wood den in here. We're just a little bit more lived in. So I think, you know, though we talk about all those things, and we talk all about like vibrato, no vibrato, you know, how all those things to make sure that that we hear the chord and yet don't get so precious about the chord. It's just a balance of craft and art. And I think the other thing we talk about a lot as the voices is the very thing that I think David mentioned earlier is we don't want to squash the individual spirit of everybody as soloists too, so that you forget how to actually sing a solo. So everybody in New York Voices is, we'd like to think, are as strong a solo singer as they are ensemble. And you just are really comfortable with putting on this hat, taking off that hat, and in a half a nanosecond, you've got the group hat on. And then that next second, you're rocking your solo. So we like to think that muscle is super fine-tuned, and we really like that muscle. I mean, you have to really want to play really nice with all your playmates when, like, I'm going to rock this right now, you've got my back, and then I'm going to totally know when to tuck myself in and be just, you know, look, the sun came out, just that four-way, you know, that four-headed artist. That
point was validated.
Yes. Anyway,
you sort of jumped me forward in a wonderful way to another point I wanted to talk about today. So you all are cultivating your own individual artistic voices at all times. And I think that's part of what you are able to bring to your work as an ensemble. But that's been sort of amplified. Another topic I want to come to during our discussion today, amplification. But that's been sort of amplified in this period of COVID, where you're not only working perhaps on your own solo work during this time, but you're also doing collaborations that you hadn't collaborated on before. So, you know, one of our family's, COVID, binge delights has been Vocal Gumbo, which has been a collaboration between Janis and Lauren. I would have thought that, like, when you guys see each other on the street, there's supposed to be like a knife fight, like in the Beat It video or something like that. You know, like I would say right off the bat, if there's a way for you to get the intellectual property rights to do a Beat It cover between Manhattan Transfer and the New York Voices, and you guys have a knife fight and Quincy Jones breaks you up in the middle of it, like, wow. I'm just saying, that's my gift to you in the world today.
Wow.
So,
Well,
but
we
go ahead.
do have actually a collaboration in the works right now as we speak. But instead of Quincy Jones, we have a world-renowned tap dancer.
Oh, all right.
So
Okay.
figure that one out.
Just get the switchblades in there. That's I've got standards over here. But talk about, well, so Vocal Mania was a program you guys were really just taking off on in New York, live performances featuring up and coming and established artists. It was sort of becoming a New York thing. COVID hits, and you guys decide you're going to move it online. That collaboration, what has that been for you? Sort of in terms of your own artistic, battery during this period of time, Janis?
Oh my God, it's been keeping my battery completely charged.
Mm-hmm.
I love the studio myself. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've been recording since I'm 12 years old, and I love the studio as an instrument, to use the studio to as a playground, to do all. And now you can do so many things in the studio
Mm-hmm.
with digital technology, but it it has been keeping my battery charged in the sense I've had to learn and try and master some of these new technologies that give me the ability to pass stems back and forth and do these collaborations. I'm able to, to collaborate with artists on the other side of the world
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is a thrill, and it's I do a lot of the vocal arrangements for the transfer, or I have done. So this has been also been an opportunity to vocal arrange, but without the pencil and paper.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's to use that muscle of the head arrangement, the
Mm-hmm.
vocal arranging on the fly, and that has been a real thrill with Lauren.
Mm-hmm.
Because we do these in the blind collaborations where some artists will send us a piece of music, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll just do what I'm feeling
Right.
without editing or discussion, and then I'll throw it to Lauren, and she'll do what she won't listen. She'll just do it what she's feeling, and then we'll mash them together. And it's extraordinary how we finish each other's sentences
Yeah.
musically.
And
You know,
somehow or other, just going back a topic, there's still blend somehow, even though you didn't work on unifying your ooh vowels for 35
Right.
minutes,
well,
Right.
blending in the studio is a different animal.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we could probably do another episode just on studio technique. David, Bohemisphere. You and I are sort of, I think, unexpectedly kindred spirits, and I'm going to go back to that Facebook Messenger chat and bug you like probably in the middle of the night, because the things that haunt me about opera are, just finding a way for this form to have authentic connection in this day and age. We give sort of this nod to the idea that opera was a popular art form, operas that we revere, like, Tosca, Traviata, and so forth, or, stories ripped from the headlines and meant to really connect. And in a sense that sometimes I'm not sure we embrace as a field fully enough. So I know Bohemisphere sort of touches to, a longer history with you and other passions that you have. Maybe just talking about your COVID pivot, Bohemisphere, how you think about keeping your artistic battery sort of fully charged during this time.
Right. Bohemisphere was a kind of a concept that came to me about 5 years ago. And around that time, I was in the middle of investigating yet a potential third career as a film director. And that idea was an evolution over time through Il Divo. In the very first days, the record company was kind of lamenting that we were creating something new and so different and unique and creative, but we didn't have any sort of behind the scenes being captured. They didn't have a film crew there capturing it, and it was just stuff that it was so improvised is not the right word, but ideas were just happening so fast in real time that no one was capturing that. It was not something that could be staged. So I said, you know what, I'm handy with a camera. Give me a camera and I'll just catch stuff and I'll send you the footage. And which was true. I've been kind of the two things that have always been artistically engaging for me was music, and that was since I was 8 years old. My first musical endeavor was, my first instrument was trombone, which youth orchestra, which ended up being a jazz ensemble. This 10-year-old kid playing jazz on a trombone, which it was, the thing was bigger than I was. And the other thing was film. My dad was kind of a hobbyist. He always had an 8mm camera in his hand, and he let me play with it. It always just kind of, it planted this seed that did not bloom until much later. When in college, as a means to kind of pass my opera directing course, I was already working as a tenor, and a performance was going to conflict with the opera scenes program. So my teacher struck a deal with me and allowed me to film an opera scene instead. And that opera scene was A Hand of Bridge. And then cut to Il Divo, they hand me a camera, I'm filming stuff, and no one was really doing anything with it. So I taught myself then how to edit as well, and started putting these things together, little short films, kind of the making of the album, the making of the tour, the this and this and that, as we kind of hit every milestone. And I've been doing that for about 15 years. And then at a certain point, my brain took all of that information and synthesized it into a new idea of, and it came around about the time Sarah Joy and I were going to do a performance. And I started seeing visions of productions that I had not been a part of, and I realized it was my brain trying to tell me, this is something you're going to create or could be creating. And cut to then creating my first film, which was a recreation of that Samuel Barber 9-minute opera, A Hand of Bridge. And so Bohemisphere then became this platform that launched an entire other section of my creativity into being. And to bring it back to your point, the kind of the way you and I and other people in the opera industry, we were racking our brains trying to find new ways of keeping this centuries-old art form relevant in modern society. And how do we get these epic storylines which seem to be so ensconced in sociological traditions that we just don't sustain anymore in the modern era? How do we keep these stories relevant? Is it that we update the production? Is it that we take it out of the opera house? Is it, how do we do this? And so I think Bohemisphere is kind of my version of trying to figure out a new way to present through film, which I think is a very underutilized medium for opera.
Although that's changing now in COVID. We're all
it is
jumping
changing
into
now in COVID. It is. And so I think this springboard could very well be, the future of opera.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100% on that. And you and I had an exchange probably 6 or 8 months ago about the idea of blue ocean strategy, and I was worried I might have piqued you at the time when we were talking about Il Divo and things that Il Divo modifies relative to a traditional operatic approach, and things that you create that are new. And video might be one of those things, because we don't do music videos for opera very often. You might reduce, certain of the quote unquote legit sound. You might lean into a little bit more of a pop sound so that there is a palette there that people can connect with more. And this is the big question is, the difference between the way you sing, which I've heard you do in like that in your totally legit David Miller opera singer roaring, opera traditional classics, versus Il Divo, they're really not that different. They're not that different, but with a 10-degree shift, you add some video, you add these the particular kinds of theatrical elements that you have in your show, and all of a sudden you go from a space where an average opera video might get 100 views or 400 views to an Il Divo video that gets 96 million views, and it's not about a 90-degree.
I wish it was 96 million.
I was just thinking to myself, this is 96 million.
From your mouth.
No, we were on YouTube this morning. I think it was for Grèce à Mai or something like that. It's tens of millions, I'm pretty sure. But and it's and I think for all of these forms, and I think of vocal jazz in the same way. These are sort of timeless languages where I think a 10-degree shift could open up a space that gives you the chance to impact people. David, that was a word you used earlier, impact people in a totally different way. So Lauren, is that when New York Voices has gone into a musical space that's not your traditional sound, whether it's like a collaboration with Paquita de Rivera, is it right with that intentionality of how do we reach people in a way that we haven't reached before, reach people we have, that we've never even spoken to before? Or is it about exploring an artistic idea that's just a curiosity and you want to dive into that? Or maybe it's a combination?
Well, I mean, I think the thing about having a long artistic career is I just think you always have to be willing to risk something. And to perhaps the initial notion of like, well, that pool of water over there isn't really that I'm that familiar with, but God, I love it. Whatever, Paquito de Rivera is doing over there, or the Count Basie Orchestra, we've toured with both of these individuals, or Ivan Lins from Brazil. When you get a chance to actually go on the road and make music with these people and record with them, that's when the transference of information, not just music, because if it was always ever just about music, wouldn't there just be like a tremendous amount of well-known music singers and people out there? It's always about the content and what's bubbling underneath the surface. It's always the emotional context or the context or the relevance, which is what David's talking about. How do you make yourself sound both extraordinarily poised in whatever genre you're stepping into, but also, accessible and exciting and, again, risking something and daring something? That's when you move the creative bar forward. And so I would venture to say that, I feel like when we really exercise that question about what do I want to really say, and how do I use all the skills that I have to help me say it? And I'm just going to do it with aplomb. I'm just going to do it. And those kinds of things, I think, really move you into places that maybe people weren't even going to see you in, because perception in this industry is exhausting, because it will always go, well, Lauren's in a vocal jazz ensemble, she's the alto, and so that's who she is. So they don't, really think about whatever maybe your other really vibrant skills over here that are just as marketable. So I think you just have to keep pushing. And I think when we've had opportunities to either work with Paquito or work with John Hendricks, like Janis and Manhattan Transfer have done, and when you have these chances to work with people, you just take on more information for your instrument to then be educated and be able to then jump into that arena comfortably in the future. And one other thing is about with our relevancy, vocal jazz is a very interesting niche, just like opera, in that it can be a bit stuck in its old ways if we're not continuing to kick that can down the road, right?
Mhm.
And so we have to constantly ask ourselves, what do we want vocal jazz to sound like now? And how can we actually mess our hair up a little bit so
Mhm.
that it actually feels a little bit more you know, current, or we're bringing other elements into it, or more youthful people, or more diversity, or any kind of thing that's going to help you grow and bring a really exciting product to the table. I think that's what has to drive the conversation these days, for the established artist,
Mhm.
and likewise for the burgeoning artist, is
Yeah.
who are you, where do you want to be, and how well can you execute, being as raw and fabulous as possible.
I love it. So, first of all, let me just say that I'm really feeling like a New York Voices Manhattan Transfer Il Divo tribute album, and vice versa. How terrifying would it be on a scale? This is just a quick hit on a scale of 1 to 10. Lauren, if you had to cover like an opera, crossover album, I think you guys could pull it off.
Carmen.
Is Carmen? Oh yeah, I love it. We could actually put together a whole production of Carmen with this group.
Well, it's always, those kind of cross pollinations are always very interesting, because you might reharm something, or you might contemporize something, but then our voices that are a little less about like spinning to the back of the room, if you get to open up that instrument to do that, that's fun for us. And likewise, it's understanding another sort of way in which a line has to be held. We've done some contemporary classical things.
Mm-hmm.
We're all trained classically, but I know for a fact I would be, really a fish out of water if I had to be in any sort of legit perception. I'd be like, I'm going to just do my best here. And if you can use my color, you got it. But if it ain't working for you, I get
it. I feel like the gauntlet's been thrown down. I want to see it. And I just also want to go back to my Beat It analogy to say that this opens up a possibility of a Darman Meter, David Miller knife fight going on right beside, Janis and Lauren.
Why are you so into the knives?
I just like the violent. I like the danger of these vocal quartets,
All right.
It's like the scene in Anchorman where all the newscasters
yes.
go down.
Yes.
Rick's got a trident, like who's got a trident?
Well, maybe we'll have to do a collaboration for Vocal Gumbo. Maybe we'll have to.
That's my thought. Yeah.
That's.
Well, I can do to support that. Go ahead, David.
As Lauren, as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, and kind of as this conversation has been progressing, and I'm not about to get political, but an endeavor like this, it would be so interesting, because it would create tensions between the conservatives and the progressives, and I think that's where we're all kind of trying to figure out where's the sweet spot between, for the opera conservatives who would say no amplification absolutely whatsoever,
right?
Or the progressives who would say, well, maybe a little amplification, we could bring in a new audience. And the what I would call the opera clergy, who would say, well, how dare you distort the sacred text of and for all of the modern progressive new audience who would say, who cares, this moves me. I enjoy this experience of being moved by music. And so trying to who are you going to alienate and who are you going to include? That's always the crux of what we're trying to do as we move forward.
I want to jump on that because for me, that might be sort of like the wrap up point here, because I think ensemble singing, any kind of ensemble activity, requires you to be true to yourself, but it also requires a certain amount of surrender. You're willing to yield something of yourself, and it sort of relates to ego. You're willing to yield something that you value to make something more valuable to other people. And ensemble singing contains that idea. It's just as like sort of a core principle. You've got to give something up of yourself to make this whole a better thing and more impactful for other people. And I feel you 1,000%, David, with opera, and I do think this comes to jazz as well. Is, what are we willing to yield to make a bigger difference in more people's lives? And for me, music is just a vehicle to do that. It's 100% about that. Okay, well, I really could do this for another hour, and it would be a horrible abuse of your time. Although in the opera space, we're used to doing things multiple hours. I'm going to sign off with one absolutely ridiculous question, and I'm going to tie off with David, and he knows why. If there was a vocal competition for voice quartets in the world, and you three were the judges, and you can give the same answer if you want. Are you Randy, Simon, or Paula? And I want to say that, every time I go out on my audition tour, I ask myself, am I Randy, Simon, or Paula today? Opera singers love American Idol. So you're stuck with this. You have to answer. You cannot divert. And because Lauren looks really petrified, I'm starting with her.
Ah!
And you do adjudication of jazz competitions and things like that. So who are you in that space?
I do. Oh my goodness gracious. I'm Rala.
Rala. Okay, Randy and Paula together.
Yeah.
I like that. Hey, listen, we're talking about how do we blend things in a way to create new.
Well done.
Rala. Okay. Well,
if we could distill down what the three of their kind of functions,
yes,
and their natures are as judges. So Simon he's really about the wow factor, and he's my former boss, and I think he's really good at being able to kind of see something's potential impact on the world. What is the wow factor? What's going to capture? What's going to impact? Right. Paula, she is the heart of the group. How much does this move me emotionally? Not necessarily wow me, but does it pull at my heartstrings? Does this make me emotional? She's the emotional one. Randy's the technician. He's always kind of interested in pitch and delivery. So Janis, if you were to say as a judge, are you a wow factor, a heart factor, or a technician?
I'm a heart factor.
Okay.
Well, you're a
Paula Abdul!
It is. We got there. And so now I'm going to put David in the terrible position because Simon Cowell, as I understand it, went to a secret lab in some Eastern Bloc country someplace and dreamed of Il Divo, and David Miller appeared out of nowhere. You're so fortunate, by the way. I thought you were going to take that in a different direction. Simon Cowell is adept at identifying the handsomest and tallest of American tenors. You could have really gone full tenor on that. Okay, but which one are you? I sort of got a feeling, but I'm not sure.
Well, I would have to say, based off of my own definitions and knowing myself as, I would say I'm extremely cerebral about singing. My voice and kind of my bodily experience of producing the sound is almost an entirely different, like, it's the boat and my mind is what drives the boat. The boat has an emotional impact for people, but I'm the driver of the boat. So I would say I'm more interested in technique. I'm more interested in accuracy, and kind of all of the qualities that you were describing as being a judge of, what are these different things that you're looking for of style and intonation and blending and all of those things. And so I love to get in and dissect all those things. And so I think I'd probably be a Randy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we got it covered. I just
want to say really quick, by the way, David, your voice is really beautiful, and it was fun to traipse around and listen to your career in the last couple of days, and in terms of really just get to know you more before I met you, and just a really extraordinary instrument. So it's so fun to hear. It's a very different instrument than mine and what I've built for myself. And I always, being around Joe and my sister Kate, who's also a coloratura soprano, you know, I get what you guys are doing. But I didn't build that. And I'm still always in awe of it, though. And it's a really beautiful instrument. And I wish your group continued success. That doesn't seem to be a problem, but still continued success.
Well, thank you so much. That was very generous and kind of you. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, you're sort of, making my dream of this Beat It video concept drift away with this detente that you have created here, Lauren. But but maybe we'll have to have you back for another episode at some point. I know people are going to really enjoy this conversation because, when I think about opera, at its core, it's storytelling through music, yes, but it's through the human voice. Like that is the unifying principle, and all of you are storytellers through the voice, and you've been generous with your voice today, and I just so appreciate you taking this time and sharing and being vulnerable, and also putting up with my ridiculous sense of humor throughout the entire thing.
Who are you, Randy, Simon, or Paula?
Which one is Joe Specter?
Well, I would say that I actually crowdsourced this question the last time we went out on tour, and I too am. If the public is to be believed, it was uniform Randy among my Facebook friends. So
very good.
Take that for what it's worth. But thank you all so much for being here today. I had so much fun. I hope you did too.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for inviting us.
Just a wonderful conversation. So signing off from UnMic'd, I'm Joe Specter. Thank you to all our guests for being here, and I can't wait to see you at the next episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of UnMic'd, where we blur the edges that connect the world of opera to just about everything else. A new episode will be released each month, so be sure to check our website, azopera.org, join our email list, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. UnMic'd is a part of Arizona Opera's Connection Lab program, a new series of digital and public offerings designed to facilitate a connection between Arizona communities familiar with our company, as well as opera goers and others well beyond our state. Arizona Opera is grateful to our lead digital sponsors for the 2020-21 season, Ron and Kay McDougall. Arizona Opera's Next Gen programs are made possible through the support of Karen Fruin, Roma Witkoff, Janis Siegel, the Valentine Family Foundation, APS, and Jody Pelusi. To learn more about the programs that are part of Arizona Opera Next Gen, please visit us online at azopera.org.